Welcome up. Today we're talking about presidential elections, but in a theocracy. Yes, I'm referring to Iran. In fact, on Friday the 18th of June, Iran held its controversial presidential elections. Of course, as usual, I'm talking about this with an expert. Guest of Understanding Politics today is Dr. Mohsen Mohiamani. Ciao Mohsen, welcome up.
Hello, I hope you are doing well. I want to thank you for inviting me to this interview, and I hope that I can say something useful to make a better image about the political landscape in Iran and what happened in the Iranian presidential election.
Listen, is the presidential election an important event in Iran? Why? What are the powers of the Iranian president and the relationship with the supreme leader Ali Khamenei?
We should bear in mind that the Islamic Republic is not a democratic regime. Neither is it an authoritarian regime. So it's a hybrid regime, I believe, that performs differently in different periods of time, depending on the internal and external situation. When we speak about the power of the president in Iran, we should know that according to the constitution, he is the second man of the country. The first man is the supreme leader, who has got big range of power. He controls hundreds of foundations, religious and economic foundations. Still, he has got power. If he wants to use his power, he can actually block the supreme leader in some ways. But over the last decades, the power of the supreme leader has expanded and has limited the power of the president more and more. So when today we want to analyze this power structure in Iran, first of all we should look at the role and power of the military forces, especially Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or what we call as IRGC. They are the first actor in terms of power, I believe.
What do you believe is the legacy of Hassan Rouhani after 2 mandates as president?
Hassan Rouhani, the current president of Iran, is a technocrat politician. He came to power in 2013 by the support of the reformist camp and the former president of Iran, Mohammad Khatami. Hassan Rouhani believed that all the issues of the Islamic Republic were because of the confrontation and disagreement between the Iranian regime and the United States. So he invested all his efforts in resolving the tensions in the area of nuclear program of the Islamic Republic. After more than a decade, he succeeded in making an agreement which became his biggest achievement, the biggest achievement of his administration. In his first term, the agreement, which is called JCPOA, could improve the economic situation in Iran a bit. The inflation rate came down. There were many investments happening by the international companies in different industries. Relationship of the Islamic Republic with the European countries improved as well. But in the second term, this achievement of Rouhani's administration was threatened when Donald Trump came to power in the US. So his only legacy was at risk and actually was destroyed by the policies of Donald Trump.
Would you say the election was fair?
Never the elections were fair and free in Iran. Since the establishment of the Islamic Republic, the conservative mullahs, the security institutions, and the military of the government were imposing restrictions on all the elections. There is an institution called the Guardian Council, which includes some mullahs and legal experts. They vet the candidates, they control the process of the election. This is what they are supposed to do. But in practice, what they do, they disqualify the critical candidates. They exclude all the serious rivals of the establishment, and they don't let big changes happen through the election. This election was exceptional because for the first time, even Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's men were disqualified. One of his closest advisors, Ali Larijani, who was the former spokesperson for the parliament, he was disqualified as well. Nobody was expecting that. Also, the former president Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, they are on the list of disqualified candidates. Nobody was expecting this to happen. Also, the Guardian Council manipulated the rules of the election. They set a scene. They engineered the scene in a very perfect way. People reacted in an unexpected way as well. First of all, the number of invalid votes for the first time reached 4 million, which is a big no to the government, I would say, to the establishment. And also, more than 50% of people didn't cast vote. This happened for the first time in the history of presidential elections in Iran. So there are two big no's to the establishment, to the regime.
What was at stake?
Since the rise of Trump administration, as I told you, the economy in Iran was impacted so hard, so bad. So let's say that the consequences of the sanctions were causing very serious risks in Iran. First of all, the inflation rate was going up very quickly. So it reached 40%, I told you before. But one of the more serious issues was the protests and strikes across the country. In many cities from last year, almost every day there was at least one small or big protest or a strike. And this is making the situation worse and worse every day and every month. So the government is not able to have enough income, to have enough financial resources to pay the salaries to the laborers, to its employees. So people are not able to provide enough food and supplies for their families, and they are not able to afford their living costs. This is the situation in Iran now. Apart from that, the COVID-19 pandemic.
How was the COVID-19 epidemic in Iran, and what is the current situation?
Well, the pandemic started in Iran when the country was already in economic crisis. So it was a big issue. The government didn't want to accept the problem. When there were reports that the virus is entering Iran and is spreading in Iran, the government was reluctant to acknowledge it. When there were warnings that the virus is spreading quickly, the government didn't have any plan to implement any restriction or a lockdown plan. So the virus spread quickly. The number of cases went up in every occasion that there were gatherings in the public places. They didn't have strict measures to prevent gatherings. And this is one of the serious criticisms against the regime, that they didn't care about people's lives. So today, the pandemic is still a very serious issue. It's still ongoing. It was one of the issues that the government was trying to take as an excuse to say that because of COVID, people didn't vote.
Who were the candidates?
Actually, in every presidential election in Iran, the regime sets the scene in a way that people can see different candidates, at least a facade of democracy, a facade of competition. So there were 7 candidates who were qualified by the Guardian Council. These candidates included the chief of Central Bank of Iran. His name is Abdel Nasser Hemati, and he was labeled as the moderate candidate, and the reformist stream was supporting him. He is not very politically active. He is a technocrat, but many reformist activists were saying that we should support him, we should vote for him. Although we are not hopeful that he's going to do something big, but he can at least save the democracy in the country. It showed to be false. People didn't believe these reasons and they didn't vote for him. There was one candidate from IRGC. He was the former general commander of IRGC during Iran-Iraq war. He ran for the presidential election a few times in the last terms, and he didn't succeed. So he made another try. This time he failed again. There was one candidate who was previously the chief of Security Council of the country. He's more associated with Ahmadinejad administration, the former president of Iran. But he's a pro-regime guy. He's a hardliner as well. He's a very traditional conservative. He's an orthodox, let's say. And there is one MP from the parliament who wasn't a serious candidate, a serious rival. Also, Ebrahim Raisi, the main candidate that everyone was saying he's going to win, which happened. And the regime invested in him, in his campaign, and finally they could get him through the election and make him the next president of Iran.
What do you think of the results?
The majority of the society was expecting it, was expecting that Ayatollah Ebrahim Raisi would be the next president of Iran. What I want to stress on is the success of the boycott campaign for the first time. After years of efforts and attempts to make people aware that this regime is not legitimate, is not going to behave democratically, is not going to accept any kind of reform, any liberalization.
What were the expectations of the civil society in this election?
When we talk about the civil society in Iran, we should bear in mind that there is no independent civil society. From the first day, the NGOs, the media, the political parties, they were all dependent on the funds of the regime. They are actually under the severe control of the regime because they should register, they should report all their activities, they should be in contact with security officers. The civil society, the Iranian civil society was concerned before the election, was saving the democracy institution in Iran. They knew, they were concerned, NGOs, activists, media were concerned that if he becomes the president, there's a big chance that democracy will be ruined by him.
Do you think that the new Iranian president will improve the relationship with the US and the newly elected president Joe Biden? What makes you think that?
We should bear in mind a few points. First of all, the conflict between the two countries is an ideological conflict. The second point is that improving the relationship with the US in Iran is not the authority of the president, of any president. Is in the hand of the supreme leader, because according to the constitution, the supreme leader is in charge of making the long-term strategies of the regime. The third point is that Ebrahim Raisi does support the core ideology of the Islamic Republic. His orthodoxy is against the US and European countries. He is against liberalism. He is against democracy. What I think he will do is that he will try to save and improve and revive the nuclear deal so that some of the sanctions that had been imposed by the Trump administration will be lifted, and this is only for the purpose of survival of the Islamic Republic regime. That's it. So I don't think that the relationships will be improved.
Thank you for your great insight, Mohsen. I'm understanding politics. Thank you for watching.